Live on YouTube. All right. Hey, I forgot to put lights on. How's the picture? It's okay. Hey, classic Dan 1. Can I have a drink with me? Waiting to tell more followers. I've rarely done a live stream martinis with Scott. This should be fun. If you have any questions, things you want to talk about, let me know. And I think we're on all channels here. So let's get started. Welcome, everybody. Martinis with Scott, episode 168. We are on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Today we're doing a live stream on Instagram as well, just for the hell of it. And it's not just for the hell of it. It's because I was unable to find the time to pre-record as I normally do. But I didn't want to let you down. So I thought, let's do this. Let's have a live stream Martinis with Scott instead. Hope everybody's having a great week. Cheers on Instagram. Oh, that's a good martini. And by martini, I mean cold Fernie Distiller's vodka with nothing in it, including a nut of olives. So that's how I'm rolling today. How's your week going? So listen, it's live stream. Jump in, give some comments, ask some questions. We'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. But in the absence of that, let's jump into a post that I did on benevolence. It wasn't a post; it was a show, and I think it was in early June. So let's call it 5-6 weeks ago. We did this show, and I talked about what humans value in persuasion. And if you don't remember it, I think it's worth going over it again. We gave the example, and I stole this from somebody on Clubhouse. So I would give them credit. You know me, I always give credit when I'm stealing content as best as I can. And I don't know if this is pop psychology or real, but it really resonated with me, and it's clearly resonated with other people. And so the idea was, picture yourself in a work environment. You're in a work environment, and a coworker of yours has a big presentation that impacts the whole firm, the whole company that you're with, or a customer, a key account. And they have to do a PowerPoint presentation, even though I've banned PowerPoint from my company, Sinclair Rage. But they're doing a PowerPoint presentation. And when they get into it, it is riddled with errors. They haven't done the work. They haven't done the review. They don't know what the hell they're doing. It's a completely incompetent presentation. Your coworker, let's say in front of a big customer, one of your primary customers. How do you inside feel about that coworker? I mean, you're pissed off, right? You're pissed off that they're not competent. You're embarrassed for yourself and for the company to be associated with this person. But that's as far as it goes. This is not a huge deal in your life. You're not emotionally hung up on the incompetence of the coworker in this example. All right, let's move this forward a little bit. So that's competence, and that's how you emotionally connect and feel and value competence in people around you. Now, that same coworker comes to you and says to you, hey, I've done the following things. I've fixed this presentation. I've reached out to the customer. I've mended this relationship. And we have another shot at this, and we're going to save the account, and everything's going to be fine, right? They give you this whole, here's what I did about it. I've recognized that my competent mistake was a bad day for me. I fixed it all, and I've done all this work, and I've communicated this to the stakeholder, to the customer that I've had this trouble with. And it turns out that was an outright lie, that person did none of those things. They ignored it. Now, how do you feel about that person? Now, how do you feel about the person that lied to you? And if you think about it and how you feel about the situation I just described to you, it's way worse. It is way worse than them just screwing up a PowerPoint presentation. Now they've lied to you. And the reason you feel worse about that is that people value trust over competence. And so if you're pitching, where this came to in the last show I did on this topic, is if you're pitching competence rather than trust, then you're doing the wrong thing. Let's take this example further. So now we know, okay, we value trust over competence. Now, let's say a person that lied to you, let's say your best friend says to you, hey, let's go for a ride. I need your help doing whatever. And you say, okay, and you jump in the car with this person, you go out for a ride. And then you don't do what the person said you're going to do, but rather they take you to a house, and out of the house, out of the door, jumps a bunch of other friends of yours, and you have a surprise party. A surprise party. This person lied to you. They're not doing the thing that they said you're going to do. You're not helping them with whatever chore they want you to help with. They took you to a surprise party, and to do that, they did it under false pretense. They lied to you. Well, how do you feel about that? You don't feel bad about that at all. You're perfectly okay being lied to. And why is that? The reason is because we as humans value benevolence over trust. Benevolence more than trust, and trust more than competence. So if you're pitching competence, you're doing it wrong. And that's what everybody pitches unless they know the difference, right? They all say, hey, we're the best at whatever it is we do, and that's why you should buy from us. Whereas trust is a better pitch than competence, and benevolence is a much better pitch than both trust and competence, okay? Which doesn't mean that they shouldn't trust you. And it doesn't mean that you don't need to be competent. It just means that we value benevolence more. And then I added to that, what do we value even more than benevolence? Is we value fear, the absence of fear, okay? And fear is the most powerful pitch. It is the most powerful element in persuasion. And we're going to talk about that more today. Hey, all of you on YouTube, thank you for jumping in. Brian, hi, everyone. Good evening. Awesome. Thumbs up. Excellent. Thumbs up to you. Back again. So I did this show 6 weeks ago. I did a post on LinkedIn and on the Sinclair Range website about this, I believe. If not, it will be up shortly. And here's what I wanted to head with this and bring this up is that I have started Martinis with Scott maybe 2 years ago. I did it as an experiment. I did it to learn. I did it to help people. And my view has always been, if we just had one person that listened, learned, it helped them in their business, it helped them in their career, it helped them in their life, how satisfying is that? How satisfying is that? How rewarding is that for me? I don't care if we get 1 million followers and 1 million subscribers and 1 million views. That's not what I'm in it for. And there's lots of reasons I'm in it. I've talked to you about that before, but I'm not here for the volume of, as you can tell by my stats, I'm not here the volume on this, but if we can help people, which I think we are consistently doing, I'm getting emails and messages, and comments all the time from regular viewers who really rely on this show. And I don't rely on is a strong word, but really enjoy the show and take a lot of value add. They change jobs. They do better in business. It changes their decision making. It helps them get through difficult times in life. And that's so rewarding for me. But this benevolence show that I'm referring to, here are my stats when I looked this up last night. That particular show had 21.2 thousand viewers, 21,200 odd viewers as of last night. Now, I know for you influencers, some of you who listen to me, I know that you've got millions of followers, millions of subscribers, millions of views on your videos. Okay, that's fine. But for me, 19 point, hey, Ron, thanks for joining us on Instagram. You guys have any comments on Instagram or questions? You want something, have something you want me to talk about? Let's do it. But for me, as I was saying, 21,000 views on a particular video is amazing. It's way above my goal of helping one person. But here's what I found coolest about that is that the average watch time of those 21,000 people was about 17 minutes, which is huge for me, a huge average watch time. Is very humbling. 70% of viewers were left. 30% of viewers left by the 30-second mark, which is completely normal. They see a video that was recommended to them by YouTube, and it's not for them, so they bail. So the 17-minute average watch time out of the people that remained is to me so humbling and so crazy. I mean, it's over 6,000 hours of people watching that particular video. on benevolence. I learned some other stats about Martini with Scott from this video. 80% of the viewership is in the US. I didn't know that. We used to be 50-50 US and Canada. Now we're about 80% in the US. Here's interesting, 50%, half the audience would be in that age group of 25 to 40. I would have assumed we were older than that, 2/3 male, 1/3 female. Okay, so why is that important? Why am I walking you through that? Number one, I'm just kind of shocked, and I just want to say thank you. And that's one of the reasons we're doing a live stream today. I just want to say thank you for listening. I'm glad that you're getting value out of this show. And I'm very, 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 as I said, humbled by the fact that you're spending over 6,000 hours just watching that one video. Let's talk masks. Let's talk leadership. Let's talk masks. And when we're doing that, I want you to remember competence. We talked about competence is not valued as much as trust. Trust over competence in sales, in persuasion, in pitches, in just what humans value in their relationships. We value trust more than we value competence. We value benevolence more than we value trust, more than we value competence. So we value benevolence. If you're doing a pitch, you should pitch on benevolence, meaning, do you have good things? Have you got the back of your customer or the person that you're selling to? Do you mean well for them? And then even stronger than benevolence in persuasion, number one would be fear. Okay, if you can sell fear, which I don't think is morally appropriate in many cases, well, not all cases, but if you can sell fear, that's a much stronger persuader than even benevolence, which is stronger than trust, which is stronger than competence. I've given you the example before when we've talked about this topic of the financial industry. What does the financial industry sell? It sells fear, right? You don't buy this product, you don't invest, you don't do, whatever it is that I'm trying to sell you to do. You're going to go bankrupt. You're going to retire with no money. You're going to starve on the street. We're selling you. You can't send your kids to college. We're selling you fear. That's what the financial industry sells. Keep that in mind. And as we talk about masks, as we talk about the pandemic or what's left of the pandemic, just remember, I'm not taking a position on anything. We've talked about this on the show before. The point of our show, the point of Martinis with Scott, is to have a discussion about changing the momentum in your life, in your business, to talk about persuasion, to talk about leadership, as particularly crisis leadership. And if we can draw on current examples, like what's going on with the COVID pandemic right now, and with leaderships with respect to vaccines and masks, if we can draw on those examples so that we all have a common context, a common understanding of the conversation, then it reinforces the point. But I'm not here to pitch on vaccines. I'm not here to pitch on masks or anti-masks. I just want to talk about leadership. I want to talk about persuasion, and I want to talk about using fear to sell. And by the way, on this fear thing, I was listening to a show last night. I don't remember who, but they were talking about media. And if you figure out why media are covering things the way they cover it, it's 100% correlated to creating conflict, right? Creating conflict, and media would include social media as well, like the Facebooks and Twitters of the world. It's designed to create conflict between two or more warring parties. That's what it's all about. Why does conflict sell? Why does conflict sell? Because fear as persuasion is way better if you have an enemy, right? It's weird, but like I could say to you, I live in BC right now. We got wildfires all over the place, and I worry about fires starting near my newly acquired home that I've owned for 2 years. I worry about that. I worry about, am I properly insured for that situation? How would the fire get put out? There's all sorts of things that I fear because it's an unknown, and I fear that because there's context, because there's an enemy, there's a fire down the street, and I have smoke in my yard, and we wonder about how that impacts us, whether there's respiratory issues that go along with that. And so we have fear because it's relevant, because there's an enemy. If you were sitting on an island, pause due to poor connection on Instagram, well, that will fix itself. If you were sitting on an island with no trees, and I said to you, you should be fearful of fires, you would say, well, I'm just not fearful of fires. Burning's a bad thing. Like getting burnt and losing your home is a bad thing. You would agree with that, but it's not relevant to you. It's not relevant to you because it's not real, because you don't have any trees and you're on a deserted island, and you're not going to burn. There's not going to be a wildfire and you're not going to burn. For fear to work, there has to be an enemy, right? And the beauty of creating an enemy is that if there's two participants in this, if you create this enemy paradigm, is that you have conflict now between the two parties, and both of them drive fear. So you could be a Republican and you could say, oh, those damn Democrats, they're trying to destroy the world. And you could be a Democrat and you could say, look at all these hillbillies with their guns and their Bibles, and I'm fearful of them. They don't live like me and they don't think the way that I do. And both sides benefit from that transaction because fear sells and conflict and an enemy drive home that the reality of fear. Okay. And so I thought that was an interesting analysis. So keep all that in mind. We're going to talk about leadership and masks. And we're doing that because we're talking about leadership and persuasion. Hi on YouTube. If you've got any comments you want to throw in, questions that you want me to cover, please let me know, or just say hello. We're doing a rare live stream on Martinis with Scott. Cheers again. So, U.S. Center for the CDC, Center for Disease Control in the U.S. on Tuesday. We're here Thursday right now. Changed its masking requirements and recommendations. Sorry, not requirements. They make recommendations. Then the administration makes requirements, or either federal or state. And they said, so the recommendation was that because of the Delta variant taking hold, that vaccinated people in certain areas of the country should resume wearing masks indoors and in public areas. Director Rochelle Walensky announced that the agency now recommends, if you're in a high or substantial area of transmission, you should resume wearing your masks indoor. And how many of these areas are in high or substantial areas? Well, 2/3 of the entire U.S. 2/3 of the entire U.S. shows up on her map. And she says, in recent days, I've seen scientific data from recent outbreak investigations showing that the Delta variant has behaves uniquely from past strains and the viruses that cause COVID-19. So, mandatory mask mandates will be implemented starting at midnight in all indoor public spaces. Oh, sorry, I've skipped it. What has my printer done to me? All right, I found out where I am. Because we're doing a rare live stream, I actually printed out my notes, which I never do. I usually look at them on the laptop, and my printer being my printer, they come in a different order, but I have figured it out. Hey, again on YouTube, thanks for joining us. Ask me if you have any questions or comments or things you want to talk about. All right, so the CDC is changing the recommendation that even if you're vaccinated, you are supposed to start wearing masks in 2/3 of the country. And sure enough, in my province in Canada of British Columbia, which is, I live about an hour north of Whitefish, Montana, but across the Canadian border, they've also announced mandatory mask mandates will be implemented starting tonight. I think that was last night, in all indoor public spaces in the Okanagan, which is a central area, a big tourist area in British Columbia, including in Kelowna, so on and so forth. Especially if they're unvaccinated, partially vaccinated, or immunocompromised. Children under the age of 12 are exempt from this, thank God. There'll be new restrictions on social gatherings, and new restrictions in the food and restaurant hospitality business. So listen, I'm not trying to persuade you to get vaccinated. I'm not telling you to get a mask. I'm not telling you to be unvaccinated. I'm not telling you anything. We're talking about leadership and persuasion and communication. I, for full disclosure, am fully vaccinated. I did so because I'm getting older. I don't have complicating factors or immunocompromised, but I'm getting older and I have getting older things going on inside me. And so I was at the verge of being in a higher risk group. And also, so the from my calculus, the vaccine makes a hell of a lot of sense. And I want to travel and I want to do things. I have to travel and I have to do other things for work that may require, or I expect would require, some sort of evidence of vaccination. And I think that certainly has turned out to be true so far. And so those were my reasons. They don't have to be your reasons. I'm not trying to argue that they should be your reasons, but those were my reasons for doing this. And because I was vaccinated, and then because things were getting better in BC, in my hometown, indoor dining opened up and no masks are required anywhere. They might be required by some store owners. You know, they're permitted to do that. So you don't come shop here without a mask, to which you can say, great, I won't come shop here then. But by law, you don't have to have a mask. You're not required to have a mask. That's not what the law says. And I got to tell you, oh my God, is it good to not wear a mask? I didn't even hate masks. I wasn't like a lot of you that just hated the idea of masks. I was fine with it. No big deal. You know, go along to get along, that kind of thing. But not having the mask, oh my God, is that good? I'm so pleased with not doing it. And now I'm just going to be super resistant to putting on a mask again. And so let's talk about the leadership of this, the persuasion element of this, and just how deplorable and incompetent and untrustworthy and not benevolent and entirely fear-focused these goddamn decisions are. Remember, benevolence exceeds trust, exceeds competence, and fear trumps them all. Okay, competence, trust, benevolence, fear. Think about that as we go through this. So what were the goals when COVID started? What were the goals of social distancing? When they said, hey, we're going to do lockdowns, think back to March, April 2020. We want you to wear masks and we want you to socially distance and be locked down. Pouring myself another drink here. What were the goals of that? What were the priorities of leadership? Do you remember flattening the curve? Do you remember that pitch, flattening the curve? It's going to be about 2 weeks. I want you to lock down for 2 weeks, and we're going to flatten the curve. Flattening the curve meant, for those of you that weren't even born yet, flattening the curve feels so long ago. Flattening the curve meant we didn't want to overload the hospitals with a bunch of sick people all at once when you don't have the bed space. And so instead of having, 0 people have COVID and then 80% of the country has COVID all at once, right? Let's flatten the curve. We're still going to get to 80% of the people of the country have COVID. We're just going to do it gradually so we don't overwhelm the hospital system, right? Do you remember that? That was the pitch, which to me made a lot of sense, right? That was a logical thing to try to do, try to flatten the curve, manage your medical resources, manage your budget resources, and that made a lot of sense. And then what happened? 2 weeks later, the whole flatten the curve thing just went out the window, and your leadership, your politicians in both countries, US and Canada, your leadership just turned into, we need to protect everybody. Okay? We need to protect everybody. Nobody's going to get COVID. This is a terrible disease, which it is. No one's going to get COVID, and we're just going to protect everybody. And to do that, we're just going to lock down, and everybody's going to wear a mask until we get vaccinations, and then, problem solved, right? You remember that turned into the pitch? I may be simplifying it. You may have had a different perspective on this, but that was effectively the pitch. We went from flattening the curve to what the hell's a curve? We just got to get rid of this disease. We got to get rid of COVID. And so whether you thought that was smart or dumb, I thought it was pretty dumb. I was all over the flattening the curve, but it seemed to me from day one that we're all getting COVID. Like, we're all getting COVID. So the only question is, do we have hospital resources? Do we have therapeutics? Do we have, sorry, I'm being tweeted to death over here. Do we have therapeutics? Do we have vaccines? But in some way or shape, we're all getting this disease. More than likely, it was always my view from the beginning, based on no scientific evidence, by the way. That's just me and the way that I'm thinking about this. And therefore, I'm thinking trying to stop people from getting it makes no sense whatsoever. At the end of the day, you get rid of viruses by herd immunity. herd immunity is math. I'm not sure what the math is. The scientists don't seem to know what the math is, but there is math. You need to get over a certain percentage of the population so that the virus starts to die out. How does the population get infected? They either get infected organically, right, which is by getting COVID, or they get the vaccination, which is a form of getting COVID. Everybody's going to get it. Then there'll be herd immunity, and that'll be the end of it. And to me, that's never changed. That's just never changed. So the idea of stopping people from getting it is just counterintuitive. It makes no sense. Actually, not counterintuitive. It's just stupid, and it makes no sense. And you're not going to get rid of the disease that way. So, all of that being the case, so those were the priorities at the beginning, right? Flattening the curve, which turned into nobody should have this disease. And what is the priority now? Well, the priority now is everybody should get vaccinated, right? Just a serious, hard push in every country in the world that I see that everybody should be vaccinated. Maybe if I gave you $100, you go get the vaccination, you go get the shot. Maybe if you give you a beer, you go get the shot. I mean, there's all these promotions, and in the U.S. in particular, I mean, they're just hucking it like a used car salesman. It's like, come on, get the. You could do this. You get the vaccination. They remind me of the guy from Sesame Street selling for you older people like me, the guy from Sesame Street selling the letters under his trench coat in the alleyway. Hey, psst, you want to buy the letter M? That seems to be the Biden administration pitch on these vaccinations. Does that make you feel comfortable? Does that make you feel comfortable shooting something into your body when it's presented to you in that way? But I think we can agree that the goal now, the pitch now, is to get the vaccination, right? That is their priority. It hasn't been about flattening the curve anymore. It hasn't about nobody getting it. It's about vaccinate, vaccinate, vaccinate. Okay, you can agree that's a good plan. You can argue that's a bad plan, but I don't think you can argue that leadership, that's what they're focused on today. So if that's the case, if they're focused on you getting your vaccination today, is it good persuasion? Is it making you more likely to get the vaccination if the CDC is communicating that even if you're vaccinating, you need to start wearing masks again? I mean, even the people that wear masks hate masks, right? I mean, nobody wants to wear a mask on either side of the political party. And now what is your leadership telling you? Your leadership is telling you, thanks for getting vaccinated. We want everybody else to get vaccinated, but there's no reward because you still got to wear a goddamn mask. That's what they're telling you. You still have to wear a mask. Well, why? Why do you still have to wear a mask? There's only a handful of options. And one of them is the vaccine doesn't work. Is that what they're telling you? Are they telling you the vaccine doesn't work? Or are they telling you that even though you're vaccinated and you're not going to die, because the death rates from COVID once you have the vaccination are effectively zero, right? I mean, they're damn close to zero. And the vaccination is not statistically going to stop you from getting COVID. It's not statistically going to stop you from spreading COVID, but it is going to stop you from dying, right? For the most part, that's the big thing. And so what are they saying? What are they saying? They're just taking away the incentive, and they're making you more skeptical. They're taking away the incentive to get the vaccination, and they are making you more skeptical about the efficacy of the vaccine itself. This has nothing to do with facts. It has nothing to do with reason. It has to do with persuasion and human motivation. The leadership is so incompetent at this in the US that it just blows my mind, and the Canadians aren't much better, or maybe they're just as bad. Let me give you another example of terrible persuasion for the stated goal of getting everybody to vaccinate. You know, when you take a vaccination, when you get the jab, you've agreed to put something in your body, that the government has told you is safe. Maybe, kind of told you it's safe. Now they're telling you you have to wear a mask anyways. And they're also telling you that it's perfectly safe, don't worry about it, at the same time that you know for a fact they've lied to you about everything else. They have lied to you about everything else to do with this pandemic, right? Fauci in the US told you, don't wear a mask, no mask necessary, go traveling, hang on a cruise ship. Then he did the exact opposite, right? Then he said, no, you got to wear a mask. By the way, he flat out admitted that he lied to you the first time about not wearing a mask. I was worried about the availability of PPE. I don't know if we had enough masks. So I lied to you. I lied to you. And now a mask is a good idea. And then he said, if a mask is a good idea, it's just science that 2 masks would be better than 1, and maybe even 3 masks would be better than 2. They just jump around. There's nothing considering. They've lied to you about the efficacy as masks. They just flat out told you they were lying to you. They've moved the goalposts, right? So they lied to you about the whole point of the lockdowns. We already discussed that. Went from flattening the curve to nobody should get this till we're just bridging the gap till we get the vaccinations. And now you got the vaccinations, and that's not good enough. We got new data, and you need to get the mask. You need to wear the masks again. So they constantly change the goalposts. And the bottom line is, as a result of the way they have led you, is nobody trusts leadership anymore. We've seen in the past 5 years a complete distrust, particularly in the US, of all institutions, like everything. The trust in institutions, in lawmaking, in Congress, in the news media, in the White House, in law enforcement, in the FBI, with the Attorney General's office. Like, just nobody believes, with the court system, nobody believes anything anymore. It's all fallen apart. Every one of these institutions has violated their trust. This is not on the American people, by the way. These institutions have violated their trust with the American people. They've absolutely done that. And now they're shocked that you don't believe their leadership, that you don't believe them. They just can't compute for them why you wouldn't want to trust them after they spent all of this time just screwing you and lying to you, right? What kind of leadership is that? It's just unbelievable. Let me give you more examples. At the same time that the CDC is telling you, well, now you need to wear masks even when you're vaccinated, from their website last night, it took me like 2 seconds to find this. It says, the CDC website, it says all vaccines currently authorized in the United States are effective against COVID-19, including serious outcomes of severe disease, hospitalization, and death. Then why wear a mask? Then why wear a mask? If that's true, why wear a mask? Right from their website. I'm not taking some sort of Fox News, CNN made up news story to come up with that. This is right from their website. Hey, on YouTube, we're talking about masks. Well, we're talking about leadership, and we're using masks as an example. Feel free to jump in with some questions, comments, whatever you want to talk about. I'm happy to conclude this and talk about other things as we go forward here on Martinis with Scott. And cheers, by the way. Thank you for joining me. So that's right from their website. It goes on to say, available evidence suggests that Pfizer, Moderna, highly effective against hospitalizations and death for a variety of strains, including Alpha, Beta, Gamma, and Delta. Highly effective against Delta, which in the other part of their website is the same strain. That's causing them to recommend that even though you're vaccinated, you need to wear a mask. Is it any wonder nobody trusts leadership anymore? Okay, there's an example. What's the last example on this? What about the southern border in the US? What about the fact that you, as a vaccinated person, that me, as a fully vaccinated person, compliant with what the government has asked me to do, is now told I have to wear a mask, even though I'm vaccinated, I have to wear a mask, even though that's contrary to all the other statements they're making on their website and to everything they want me to do. Yet at the same time, there's been over 1 million migrants come in over the open southern border. I'm not politicizing this. If you think in the US that that's a good idea for your country, God bless you. God bless you. Have an open border, have a closed border. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is persuasion and leadership. At the very same time, they're telling you as vaccinated people that you need to wear a mask and start distancing again, and you can't go to a restaurant. At the very same time that they're telling you that, they're letting an open border on the southern border. By the way, the Canadian border is closed. Canadians can't come into the U.S. just willy-nilly, okay? But on the southern border, you're all good to go. Not only that, there's no COVID tests. Everybody's thrown in confined spaces. There are no one cases of the disease. There's no one cases of this virus in those enclosed spaces. There's no one cases of these migrants, these poor migrants that are, certainly have a number of issues and need to be helped. And they come in with this virus. And what is the U.S. government doing? They're shipping around to communities around the U.S., letting them out of the bus or the airplane, and not telling the communities that they just let a bunch of infected people into their environment. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a good thing. Sure as hell not saying that. We can all agree that these people need help, and we can all agree that we should do everything, or the U.S. should do everything it possibly can to help these people. I'm just saying, how can you, as a vaccinated person, trust your leadership? How can you trust your leadership when they do one thing for you and a completely different other thing for another group of people? Okay? It makes no sense. It builds distrust. And if you're in a leadership position in a crisis, you need clear priorities that don't change, or if they do change, you need to explain why you changed them. Okay? You need clear priorities, and then what you need to do is be consistent and honest. What you can't do is change the goalposts every day, lie to your constituents and to your stakeholders, and treat one group different than another group, and then expect to lead. You expect the people to follow you. That's just nonsense. It's bad persuasion. It's bad leadership. And that's what we talk about on this show. Again, I'm not trying to pitch masks. I'm not trying to be anti-mask. I'm not trying to be pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine. And I don't even want to touch the border issue. But there's a context. There's something that I think we can all understand the example. And I just have a hard time believing, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, that you think there's legitimate leadership in either country, in the U.S. or in Canada, on this issue. Is just complete crap. It's terrible, but we can learn from it. So let's do that. Hey, we're doing a rare live stream on Martinis with Scott. We're on YouTube Live. We're on Instagram Live. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Say hi, give a wave, give a comment, ask a question. We can change topics. And what I'm going to talk about now, if you don't have something else for me, is 10 bad filters, mental filters. What the hell are a mental filter, you ask? Well, a mental filter, look at the human brain. The human brain does not consider all data all the time and then make a decision based on the data all the time. What it does is it recognizes patterns. And that's a shortcut to processing information. I always give the example of driving down the road. You're on a long road trip. It's dusk. You're kind of tired. You're just like sitting back, driving your car, and you're not asleep. You're just in the zone, right? You know that feeling. You're just in the zone. And then what happens? Then somebody cuts you off, or construction happens, or a deer runs in front of you, or whatever. And you're in the zone driving your car, and the deer runs in front of you. And what do? You jump up. You jump up. If you're on the podcast, you missed my great acting on that. But you jump up, you come awake, and you feel it in your body. You're on edge. You're ready to respond. Your brain is now processing information, right? Your brain is processing information. You're making decisions because it's not the same pattern. It's not just the black top driving when you're in the zone. And that's the difference between pattern recognition, which is the way your brain wants to operate. Otherwise, it would just explode. It wouldn't have enough bandwidth to deal with the day-to-day things. I don't have to think a lot to drink my martini and say cheers to you and thank you so much for joining me. Right? But if that happened to be gin instead of vodka, well, my brain would wake up and say, hey, that's not right. That's not the pattern that I recognize. That's the way the human brain works. So it follows that if you have these mental filters, the way that you perceive everything, the patterns that you look for, if you have these mental filters, this way of seeing yourself, this way of seeing the world, well, then those filters could be productive, right? Like positivity, or they could be unproductive, like negativity, right? And by productive and unproductive, I mean the filter may help you get through life in a great way, or the filter may hold you back and be an anchor from getting through life. And so that would be a bad outcome. That would be negative. And the beauty is that of this conversation is that we can actually predict. We can predict what sort of filters might give you a good outcome in your life or in your business, and what sort of filters may give you a bad outcome or negative impact in your life and your business. Now, I did a show, a couple episodes on Martinis with Scott, where I reviewed some fellow's article. I forget who it was. And he had, the 20 bad filters that are holding you back. And I talked about some of them. I disagreed with a bunch of them. So that was kind of an open discussion. Well, in an article that I put on LinkedIn and on sinclairrange.com, sinclairrange.com is the name of that website, my firm, I brought this down to 10 filters that I think are common. I'm not saying you have those 10 filters. I'm not saying I have these 10 filters that are negative, that are unproductive, but I have some of them, and a lot of people have some of them. They're very common. So if you're being held back, or if you have loved ones or coworkers or other people that are being held back, you could think about these negative filters. And by the way, then the Holy Grail, of course, is how do you change your negative filter? Oh, I do this. I have this mental filter, this confirmation bias, and I try to skew facts into this way of thinking. How do you change that? Well, the good news is that filters are like habits. Like, you can change them, but the first thing you need to do is recognize that you have that mental filter. You need to know that you have that filter, and that's half the battle or 3/4 of the battle, because now when you're in the situation where the filter applies, you can recognize that all it is, your reaction to that is just a filter, and you can change it, and you can think the opposite. You can think the opposite, and so there's half of the battle right there. So what are my 10 unproductive mental filters that are holding you back from success? Number one, negativity. So this is assuming, this is a filter that assumes that your future is going to unfold in a negative way to your well-being. Negativity leads to a host of problems. We talked about this a lot on the show. It can lead to a lack of confidence, a fear of failure, insecurity, and that can manifest itself in physical problems. Well, it can also lead to paralysis, action paralysis. Like, I'm just fearful, so I'm not taking any action whatsoever in this particular crisis. It can lead to stress and high blood pressure, those sorts of things. And so negativity is my number one on my list. And I think negativity in and of itself drives into a whole bunch of other negative filters. Thank you for joining on Instagram. You have questions, comments, please say hi, or just have a drink with me. Just have a drink with me. We're doing a rare live stream version of the weekly Martinis with Scott, having a drink, talking about how to do better in business, regain momentum, how to regain momentum in your life, critical thinking, persuasion, those sorts of things. So negativity was number one on my top 10 list of negative filters that are going to be unproductive for your success. People frame that. I always frame things in the negative, ironically. So people frame things as, you need to be positive. You need to be positive thinking. I thought for a long time, why? Why do you need to be positive? And then I finally figured out that the answer is so that you're not negative. You don't have to be positive to succeed. What you have to be is not negative, because negativity is just death. Figuratively, metaphorically, literally, it's just death. You need to think in a positive way so that you don't think in a negative way. Think about an athlete, right? If I'm going to go out and play in the Stanley Cup on an NHL team, let's pick an individual sport. Let's say I'm going to run the 100 meters since we got the Summer Olympics going on right now, and if I get into that race and I'm thinking positively, I'm going to win. I'm going to win. I'm doing my morning mantra. I'm going to win the 100-meter race. I'm going to be the fastest person in the world. Will that make me win? Well, no, it's not going to make me win. It's not going to help me in my mind. And I've competed in athletics at a professional level. That's not going to help you win. But if you go with a negative view that I don't have a hope in hell in winning, like I won by just getting here, I'm happy to finish 5th. If that's your attitude, are you going to win? No, it's guaranteed that you're not going to win. Negativity is the strong part of this, not positivity. You need to be positive so that you're not negative. That's how I look at this. So number two on my bad, unproductive mental filters, absolutism. Absolutism. You've all seen this before. It's a belief in absolute principles, and that could be in politics, it could be in business, it could be in life, the way you interact with your friends, and so you will allow for no middle ground. And I would suggest to you that nothing worth thinking about is black and white. Nothing. There's always gray. So as a leader of an organization, of a business, of a leader of your own life, you need to understand and empathize and seek to understand the two sides of the equation to see what the gray is. But you need to do that. Here's the hard part. You need to do that without being paralyzed and pushed into inaction, right? You need to be comfortable with half knowing. In fact, I suggest 70% is the right answer. You need to make decisions based on 70%, but you need to recognize there's a gray. You need to recognize that nothing is absolute. Number three, masturbation, M-U-S-T-E-R-bation, is a term in psychology to describe the phenomenon whereby people live by a set of absolute and unrealistic demands. Here's a cool quote from Albert Ellis, a famed psychologist. There are three musts that hold us back. I must do well, you must treat me well, and the world must be easy. What a great quote. I must do well, you must treat me well, and the world must be easy. How many people do you know that have those three musts, that attitude? And as Albert Ellis says, those are the three musts that are holding us back. Number four, self-serving bias is a condition in which being right is more important than the facts or feelings of others. That's pretty prevalent in today's society, isn't it? And you see this in politics with the two sides arguing. They don't care about the facts; they just care about being right. You see this in leadership all the time. I'm here to tell you, you see this in businesses all the time, particularly troubled businesses, which is my world. And you just talk to senior management, and they just want to be right. Right? No, we've tried that. It doesn't work. I'm right. You can't do this. I'm right. You can't do that. You can't do it. You can't do it. I've tried it. It didn't work. I'm right. You're wrong. They don't care about the facts. I don't want to say they don't care, but they just, confirmation bias does not allow them. Mental filters do not allow them to accept that there might be another way and that they might be wrong, right? They might be wrong. Okay. Number five, entitlement. We all know what that is. But that's the whole, as Albert Ellis would have said, or did say in his quote, the world must be easy. The world must be easy. Entitlement, mental filter that just so many people have, particularly a younger generation these days, that are holding them back. Number six, repetition of the same behaviors over and over while hoping for different results. This is Einstein's definition of success. I always say this in troubled companies, if you're a troubled company, if your business is not performing, and you're just doing the same shit over and over, and you figure it's going to work sometime, that's Albert Einstein's definition of insanity. If you're troubled, you need to do something different. You need to change. You absolutely need to change. You need to change yourself, or you need to change the team, or you need to change your strategy. You need to change something. By definition, you've done this as hard as you can, and it didn't work. You failed. You can't just do the same thing over and over. Number seven, personalizing. Is a belief that things that other people do or say are a direct personal reaction to you. That was a hard lesson in my life. I thought, someone's not calling me back. I'm not getting the sale. What have I done wrong? 90% of the time, it's not about you. It's not about you. You're trying to convince somebody to do something they have no interest in doing. They got their own issues going on, right? It's not about you. And if you think it is, then you're just feeding into your insecurity, inaction, failure, fear, right? It's a bad filter. Number eight, blaming. Sort of the opposite of personalizing. This is just where everything that happens to you is somebody else's fault. Everything is somebody else's fault. You have no personal responsibility, no accountability. Number nine, overthinking. This sort of ties into the absolutism issue. Again, here's a good rule of thumb. If you're running a business or you've got a difficult decision in life, get comfortable with making decisions on about 70% of the information. That's all you're going to get. because lack of speed in business kills. Lack of speed kills. You need to make a decision. The only wrong decision, I always say, is no decision. No decision is a decision in and of itself. You need to learn to make decisions quickly without overthinking. And lastly, on my top 10 list of bad mental filters is basing future decisions on sunk costs. This is an economic, so basing future decisions on sunk costs. This is an economic concept. If you're in a relationship and you've spent 5 years with this person and you want to get married and build a life together, and it turns out this person is a complete unmitigated disaster, sunk cost thinking is, I've already spent 5 years with this person. I don't want to start over. We got a house, we got a joint bank account. I just can't even think about starting over with someone new. I'm just going to stick it out and live in misery for the rest of my life. That's a sunk cost thinking. What's done is done. What's done is done. You can't change the past. You need to move on and make your decisions based on today and the future. Based on today and the future. You cannot make your decisions based on the past, which you cannot change. All right, that's that topic. Instagram, YouTube, comments, questions, anything you'd like me to cover? Going once, going twice. Okay, look, I've been 51 minutes into this. I was going to talk about the value of compounding. You know, sometimes we like to do some math here on the martinis with Scott, particularly after I've had a few martinis. But I think this has been plenty long enough, so I'm going to cut it off, and we'll try to tackle that in a future episode. Anybody want to say anything? Anybody want to say goodbye? Nothing. I'm going to say goodbye to Instagram first. Thank you so much for, I don't know how to say goodbye to Instagram first. How do we do that? Maybe I hit that X. Are you sure you want to end the live stream? Yeah, you bet I am. And now, and YouTube, thank you so much for joining me. We'll talk to you next week. Have a great weekend.